one of the sample dates was on one of the results we received was on Friday, May 25th. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the first page here.
Yes, okay.
Second column. I'm seeing sample date for the Cylindrus formosan taken on May 25th, and then we received the results the very next day on Saturday, May 26th, which would indicate a 24-hour turnaround. Is that correct?
So we had really pushed our lab based off of the evolving situation to get us our results faster than they normally are able to. What that means is that we had actually shipped our sample containers directly to the lab manager's home, so he could run those in. So it was an attempt to really push this data to get that through. I would have to double check, and I would need to go back to my data, but I do believe, I know we did receive data on Saturday, the 26th, and we did receive data on Sunday, the 27th.
So for my looking at this timeline, it looks like the last test results we received before the advisory was on Saturday, May 26th. Is that correct?
The last data that we had received was on Sunday, May 27th.
And where is that at?
If you go down to the
Or
microsystem,
not so much data, I guess, but before we issued the advisory, what was the last day that we received results before we issued the advisory on May 29th?
the last day that we received results were on Sunday, May 27th.
And where is that at on this sheet? Because
So-
on this first page, all I see is we received results on the 25th, the 26th, and the 31st.
So, okay, so that's, I see where the confusion is. So, this data that is on this first sheet was solely data that was advisory driven. So if it was below a health advisory for either vulnerable or adult population, it was not on this list.
Okay.
So I think that was,
And then,
But it is on the other sheets, on the ones that have the graphs show all of the data points.
and I do want,
Whether they were above the advisory levels or below.
well, on this other sheet just shows the sample dates. It doesn't show when we received the results of those samples.
and I can add that in.
So also from this sheet, I'm curious, were there no samples taken on Saturday, May 26th?
Correct.
And why was that? Why were we not sampling on Saturday?
We had decided collectively to sample on Sunday and on Monday. That would give us, none of the samples were gonna be able to be out in time to get to the lab. Everything was gonna be arriving at the lab on Tuesday regardless of when we sampled. We wanted the most recent data, so we decided to have the Sunday, Monday data to be able to see what the most recent trend was in data rather than like having Saturday or Sunday and not having Monday. So at this point, we were not, we were making treatment adjustments at our water treatment facility. We were thinking, we had gone to a good groundwater supply. Algae and algal toxins are primarily, surface water related. And then we had to go back to surface water because we had a break on our transmission line on Sunday morning. And so we had to go back and make some additional adjustments to compensate for that. So we were looking for 2 sets of data that was going to be the most current 2 sets of data.
Okay. And just a couple more questions and then I'll pass it on. Are there labs in Oregon that can test for these toxins?
I'm sure, I would imagine that there are.
I was told in an email we received from Director Fernandez, and I'll pull it up here in a moment, that there are no labs in Oregon that test for the cyanotoxin.
Right.
I'm asking if that's actually factual.
My understanding is that there are no labs in Oregon that are certified to test for the toxin, and we need to operate with people that are fully certified to provide us the tests that we need, the results that we need.
Have we looked? Is this you're saying to your best of your understanding, but have we actually looked into that?
Well,
Especially in light of the kind of the situation that we're in?
we didn't look over the weekend, no.
Why not?
Well, because
if we're having
labs don't open on weekends.
If we're having an issue though with part of this issue, from my understanding is we're having to send these test samples to a facility in Ohio or Texas, and there's there's physical logistics associated with getting a physical sample of water over there, and then how we're receiving the results back, which I don't know how we're getting the results, if they're an email or fax or web or a physical, whatever, but I would think that we would want to seek out other labs that are closer physically in proximity so that we can get these samples to them more quickly, so they can begin that process and basically cut out a day of travel. So I'm curious as to why, even on a weekend, we're not seeking out that information, or maybe perhaps consulting with the Oregon Health Authority about that. I would think that folks are on call to be able to provide that kind of information in an emergency type situation.
Yeah, I can just add, the drinking water program has a contract with a lab to do analyses of these toxins. We did several years ago when we were preparing some best management practices and whatnot, try to identify a list of labs and establish a standing contract to be able to do analyses, and we were only able to find out-of-state labs at that time, and our contract was with a lab in Michigan. So samples are FedExed, overnighted to the lab in Michigan, and we received email results back.
So I just want to be really clear here, is that neither the City of Salem nor the Oregon Health Authority sought out another lab that could potentially analyze our sampling. We stuck with our contracted labs. Am I correct in that understanding?
Well, if you're asking if we started making phone calls on Saturday with that a lab,
I am.
the answer is no.
Okay.
But if I can add to that, when we go out for our contract, we have a very strict turnaround process where we ask them for emergency turnaround of time for these results. And there are very few, if any, that can be, other than our BSA lab, that can meet that strict turnaround time. And so as in going through that effort through the contract, knowing that yes, there are labs that can analyze this, but it's going to be a week or 2 weeks before we can get those results, we also have to incorporate that fast turnaround time. And also it's important for us to compare apples to apples when we're looking at our results. So making sure that we're having the consistent lab results coming in from the same lab. We did take up an offer from the Oregon Health Authority to send duplicate samples out to Lake Superior, one of our sampling events. We are still waiting for that data back from Lake Superior. So our lab, it has been phenomenal in working with us and understanding our emergency and turning this data around and working with us to get shipments at home and paying their staff overtime and doing everything that they need to do to be able to get this us data as quickly as possible. So I have also in the last week not either had any labs reach out to me or reach out to the City of Salem to offer, hey, we could beat that turnaround, or we send it here, we'd love to help you out, or any of that either. So no, we've not been reaching out. We're confident and that we've got a very quick turnaround, one of the best turnarounds you can get for this data back, and so that's where we've been.
I think yield to